is episode 22. Had to check. We've got Emma Gray. It's Beyond the Battlefield. It's Warrior Wellness Movement and Rainbow Hunting. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But if you're watching this, please subscribe, please share, please like, please do all the stuff to support this incredible project. And we've already started talking.
I know.
And we need to rewind and rewind. This is why I say I don't speak to people outside.
I'm pleased I was late.
Yeah, but we waste all the good stuff. But we have you with us finally. And you are, of course, a Royal Marines widow.
Yep.
To
Cy Gray.
And tell us a little bit about Cy.
So I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I don't know whether to start when I met him.
You said to me just before we hit record, who's going to cry first? I told you when I met you, I came off the call with you and I was like, fucking hell.
I'm a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe that's where we start,
Yeah.
is that anyone who's listening to this, just watch where you are, watch who you're with, and all the rest of it. Because actually, I talk about death, I talk about cancer, and I'm very open about my story, but I think you need to feel strong enough to hold it. And if you don't feel strong enough to hold it, that's fine. Hit pause and listen to it another time, because it is the hard side. Because I've listened to some of your podcasts and I have to say, I feel really humble and I don't feel like the right person to be sat in this
Don't
seat.
be daft.
You've got all these like amazing veterans and who've done like SF scary stuff and all the rest of it. And I'm the bootneck missus left at home.
But this is what the podcast is. When I created Beyond the Battlefield, like most things, I just cuffed it and winged it and had an idea and went, yeah, let's do this. And then Will, Express Media, the guy behind the camera, we came up with this concept of what we wanted to do. And I wanted to talk to people that were not always military background, because not all the guests have been military. The majority have, and then funnily enough, it starts getting bootneck heavy. But I didn't want it to be that podcast that is very, very royally and warry and that's fine. But there's lots of them. I wanted it to be more about what I do, holistic health and wellness. I wanted it to be about emotion. I wanted it to be about people talking about real life experiences. So you don't feel like the fraud or whatever it is you said that you are, because you're not. And you know, you said out there, should we talk about this? And I said, absolutely, because it's the things that we don't talk about. So honestly, it's your story. I don't know it. You've only mentioned it briefly when we met, and it's it was upsetting.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Spoiler alert, my husband dies. So who was he? I always used to say he was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed one, usually wearing a like farmer check shirt, but looked kind of, he kind of looked a bit like an officer, but I guess that's because he was. When I first met him, he was chinos. They like had a uniform out of uniform, the chinos and the pale blue shirts, and they even went clubbing in that. And I look back on it now and I just think, how icky was that? Like, that's so not attractive.
And called it clubbing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the dancing, my good grief, the dad dancing was unreal. So who was he? He was smiley, he was happy, he was inspirational, he was bootneck ethos to the core. Like when I did his eulogy at his service, I still have that little card that they've got the core values on in my wallet. And he was them, you know, he was cheerfulness in the face of adversity. He knew from the moment he was diagnosed, he was going to die. People who met him, especially after he'd had his first round, and I don't mind going into the story at all, but especially after he'd had his first round of chemo, they thought he was in remission, and he wasn't. He was still riddled, but it's just not how he wanted to live. His body, I mean, you know, with you, especially you guys who've had to come out because of injury, your body is your job, and then when your body didn't work, that's massive. But by the time he died, he looked like he'd been on Burma Railway. He was very skinny.
What was the timescale from getting diagnosed to?
So I always say the kids were 3 and 5 when he was diagnosed and 6 and 8 when he died. But actually, I was talking to Livs about it this morning, my elder daughter, and actually he was poorly when they were younger than that, so probably 2 and 4. But he was diagnosed in December 2013 and he died. I'm going to make you cry. Tomorrow, 9 years ago. So the kids and I run away now every year. We go to Cornwall, just the 3 of us, nobody else. Kids surf. We do a bit of pretending they're both 16 so that they can have spa treatments and all the rest of it and just chill and look after ourselves.
And the girls, they don't remember him.
Not really.
No.
And that's my biggest shame, because being a dad, he was a typical bootneck dad. He was away during the week. He'd rock up on Friday evening. They would be ready for bed, cozy, clean, lovely, getting quite sleepy. And Daddy comes home, and suddenly the world is turned upside down, and the life is really exciting. And he was home for like a day and a half, and then he was back to work on Sunday.
Yeah. The classic bootneck or military life that it is.
Yeah.
I lost my dad 3 years ago, and that's the thing that hurts me the most is my children. So my little girl, she's 7, nearly 8. So yeah, she was sort of 4, 3, 4. She won't remember him, but we can only keep that memory alive for her through talking, through pictures. My boy, different. He was 8, and he was in that period when my dad was still here. My dad lived in Spain, so they didn't see each other that much. But when they did, they had this incredible bond, and that was hard. God, I'm going to go now. Yeah, that was difficult, and it still is. That's the biggest hard. It's like, of course, I miss him as my dad and all the things, but that really fucking gets me.
It's the kids, and it's why I do what I do now, because I. Like people who say, I didn't want to mention Si, or I didn't want to contact you, or I didn't want to say something because they're worried that it'll remind you. I think about him every day. Like even when he was alive and he pissed me off, I thought about him every day. You know, you just do. It's just the way it works. And actually what happens when someone remembers someone and says their name is that you realise that they were important to them. And then the stories come out. And that's why anyone who was touched by Si, who comes into my world and is able to tell my kids stories about him, they're helping to create who he was. And now they're teenagers, they're wanting to know who he was, and they're wanting to know what he did, and how crazy he was. And
and death is it's such a weird thing, isn't it? I'm not good around death. I'm shocking, and I suppose I deal with it my way by perhaps not talking about it. I'm going to a funeral tomorrow, actually, which is very sad. A guy, a bootneck, who I was in Hasler with, and he died with a brain tumour. And it's just funerals and death is so hard. And this is where you come in with what you do. And I was amazed, I suppose is the right word, outside just a minute ago when you stood in front of your daughter and you were talking about Simon and you were laughing at that. And I almost felt awkward. It's bizarre.
And I think people sometimes do, because it's not done in society. So therefore it does feel awkward because we don't do it enough. But I hate to say it, we're all going to be 100% successful at the end of the day at this death thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to touch.
100% success rate.
It's 100% success rate. But so we need to prepare for it. We need to talk about it. But I also appreciate, and it's a trauma response. You know, you think about your window of tolerance and all the stuff that you do. You get hyper aroused and you go fight or flight and get angry and frustrated, or you go dormouse, hypo aroused. And that's what people do around death, is they shut down. And actually it needs to be seen with more compassion, because actually it hurts and it's touched a nerve, and you need to shut down, because if you open up, it's too painful if you don't do it when you feel safe and in the right space. And like anything trauma informed, it needs to, a lot of the work is in making people feel that they're okay with those emotions. Otherwise the emotions themselves are the scary things sometimes.
We spoke, so resilience is a big one. The guest who you just met who came on before, Lee, so he's a leadership coach, and we spoke massively in the last podcast about resilience. So what we do with our program with mental resilience through cognitive behavioral therapy, behavioral change. And one thing I've learned from running my program and being a coach is how much I've learned from my other 2 coaches of listening to them. So free coaching, it's my coaching system, but I get the free coaching. But it's true, because I spoke earlier, I had to go and a few months ago, go move my mum from Spain. She lives in Spain on her own. I had to go move her out of her house and into her home, and she'd had a fall, and it was Portia came with me, and we spent 72 hours essentially crash moving her, packing her house up, which was very emotional, going through all her belongings, throwing stuff out, keeping stuff, moving her. She's still hit. It's not, but I dealt with it really well.
Yeah.
I dealt with it really well, better than I thought, because of that resilience word that I spoke about, because of what I feel I've learned from being the coach that I am now and my two coaches that work for me. And it just made me realise how important it is in life to plug in my coaching here, but to be coached, to have a system, to do what you do, to listen. Because we can't go through life just fumbling and bumbling our way through and waiting for the wheels to come off and then find a coping mechanism that's probably a self-destructive behaviour like alcohol or something, or complete behavioural changes. It's having that coaching and from people like yourself and me and all the other systems out there. And I've seen it firsthand with that example I just gave you. I was just more resilient. And I don't know, I couldn't really put a thing on it why. I just was. This is going to catch me up maybe in a few months. I don't know, but
It might do.
Yeah.
But it might not as well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think that, gosh, there's so much I want to say from what you said, but with the alcohol and stuff, like especially when you talk about grief, and I think it's the same with your vets and the trauma. It's not the pain of grief that does the damage. And people think it is. It's not the pain of the grief that does the damage. It's what they do to hide it. It's the alcohol, it's the sex, it's the drugs, it's the what they do to hide it that does the damage. And actually to open it up and to talk about it in a safe space. And I think even if you just know you are held and you have a safe space, that means that you have more resilience. But the other thing I wanted to pick up on that we touched on briefly when we were chatting outside is, so my old world was I was a wills and probate lawyer, and people don't want to talk about that paperwork either. And we had deathbed wills, and it was like deathbed wills are a fail in some respects, because you really want to be talking about emotions and being with people and holding hands and making sure people are pain-free and as comfortable as possible. You don't want to be rushing around finding a lawyer to try and make sure, and then worrying about is there capacity and is there undue influence and all the rest of it. And similarly with what you do with the wellness and what I do with the grief, I don't think they should be crisis purchases. I really don't. I don't think people should come to you because their body is broken. I think they should come to you because they want to keep their body strong. And same with me. I don't think that grief should be like, people come to me when they are so broken with grief, and it's often complex. And what they don't realise is, I believe, that grief can put a metaphorical magnifying glass over other stuff. So they come to me, they have this huge amount of grief, especially if someone's died suddenly. But even if someone has had an illness, there's still a huge amount of shock when they go. And they present with this horrendous death story, but actually they then discover the reason that they're not resilient is they had childhood trauma, or they had actually the person who died was really quite unkind to them and unpleasant to them. So it's really complex because they loved them and they've died. And suddenly they're trying to process everything, but they're at the point of grief. And actually, if you process the other stuff as you go along, when the death happens, you've got that amazing word resilience. You're stronger because you've already processed, and you know that, yes, you had the childhood trauma, or yes, you had the tricky relationship, but you've already kind of dealt with that. So then the grief isn't going to totally blow your brains. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. The bit I took from that as well is we live in a society where too many of us are reactive. The term I use is the wheels come off.
Yeah.
Don't come to me when the wheels are falling off. A big one for me with Warrior Wellness Movement is trying to bridge that gap between when people leave the service and they lose their identity and they lose that belonging of who they are. And all of a sudden it's been 5, 10, 15 years and the wheels are falling off and they're overweight, unhealthy. They've picked up a few niggles, injuries, diseases or whatever. Oh, and I need some help now. Great, I will help you. But we need to bridge that gap to stop that happening. And again, come back to what you were saying and what you do. And I would say there's not enough of it out there. I think there is. And it's finding a system and someone that you can relate to.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is why people come to you.
Yeah, well, it was a big lesson when I was a lawyer, because obviously I wasn't really your man in a pinstripe suit. I've always been a bit me. And I think it sometimes surprised people. They wanted to go and get their paperwork done and they were expecting some very like serious lawyer. And then they got me smiling at them. And it really surprised me then that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. And it was a harsh lesson, but we're never going to be everyone's cup of tea. But the people whose cup of tea we are the people we can help. And there's, you know, we're all unique. And it's a little bit like parenting. You know, there is no rule book for grief because everyone's grief is as unique as the relationship they had with the person who died. So there's no rule book for it. And it's like parenting, like there's no rule book for parenting because every kid is different, every parent is different.
Yeah, and aren't we, like, yours are 15 and 17, mine are 8 and 15. 8-year-old, easy. Yeah. Easy peasy, or 7 in fact. She's 7 or 8. Oh my God, I forgot my daughter's age here. 7, she's 7. But it's easy. And all of a sudden they become teenagers. And like, you've got 2 girls, my boy, the things that just get thrown up that no one ever tells you about. Like you said, there's no rule book. And this is why I had so much admiration for you, and it upset me. It touched me because when it comes to children, I get really emotional. It's like the one thing in my life when it comes to anything based around the children, that's what gets me. So when I spoke to you, and obviously the kids losing their father. I don't even know where to start to ask you, like, how, as the person you are now, the powerful woman that you portray, that you, the knowledge you've got, the people you influence, the people that you coach, all the good stuff, that didn't just happen.
No.
How did you possibly get to where you are now from 9 years?
I broke a few times and I had to build myself back up again because we all do. And I don't think enough people talk about it. You know, one of the things you asked before we started this was, where was your low point? And I was like, which low point are we going to talk about here? Because, you know, if you rewind, I guess my first low point was when Si was on Herrick 14. That was 100%. I know it's really weird, but I can still remember the night that as a bootneck, he decided we'd run out of money because we'd drunk it all and we were going to walk home along the Thames instead of getting a taxi, because that's what bootnecks do, rather than like put the girlfriend in a taxi. Let's just route march her home. And he said to me then, he said, my dream is to be a lieutenant colonel. One of the most upsetting things of all is that he was promoted on diagnosis, so he'd made it. But a little bit like everything, you then want the next, don't you? You want the next thing. And he said he didn't think he ever wanted kids. And as I was walking along the river, and I knew that he really didn't want to join as an officer, he would love to have joined as a lad and just bashed down doors, because that's what he got his kicks and thrills from. I was like, I don't think you're going to be in mine forever. And I had that feeling my whole life with him. Honestly, I thought he would die doing one of the crazy sports, because he didn't just ski. He put his skis on his back and climbed up a mountain and found fresh powder. He didn't just cycle. He cycled the entire Tour de France in the same time frame as the professionals and raised money for what was then the C Group. You know, you don't do things by halves, do you, bootnecks? And so I thought either he would have some horrible accident, or he'd get blown up, or he'd leave me for someone prettier and stronger and nicer than me and less of a basket case. So my first fall to pieces was definitely Afghan, and he came home, and you know, as you guys do, you go for your decompression, which is totally not enough, but anyway. And he came home, and then you have this like epic time at home, and as a wife you go from not having had them around, and I used to go into what I called single mum mode, where everything ran very smoothly. It was pretty clockwork. I had my way of doing things, and suddenly daddy parachutes in and everything goes a bit crazy. And then he couldn't do right for doing wrong, so he'd do the laundry, but he wouldn't hang it out right. And so he either wouldn't do the laundry and I'd shit on him, or he'd do the laundry and he wouldn't do it my way and I'd shit on him. And, you know, it just is like that when you get back, isn't it? And they leave their shoes everywhere, and just life is just a little bit chaotic, and your world is turned upside down. And I will never forget, he walked into our kitchen, and we bought, just before he went to Africa, and we'd bought our first ever home. And he walked into the kitchen, and I turned around to him and I said, I think we need to talk. And he looked me dead in the eye. And I still laugh about this in some respects. He said, I hope you haven't found someone else. And I was just like, no, I think I need to see a shrink. I think I'm falling to pieces. And I was getting like eczema on my hands. I was getting migraines. And it was just the stress of the person I loved doing this crazy thing. And I can still remember giving him a hug before he went to Afghan in our kitchen, because I knew he wouldn't want me to hug him in front of the lads. And he had his dog tags on. He never used to wear his dog tags. And so the fact that he was wearing them when he was about to go to Afghan just made it all too real. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again, because I just had this weird feeling. So that was definitely low point number one.
That's a really interesting topic with so many layers, because I remember coming back from the Gulf from maritime security, having been away for months and months on end, and just slotting back into life where my wife was then, where my little boy was just self-sufficient, and I was just I would just come back, yes, off we go, back onto the school run, back onto leaving shoes out, and it caused problems. And so from my point of view, so what, I've been away for ages, can't you just, but from the partner's point of view, it's like, we've been surviving without you, and it's been shit, and we've got our own routine, don't interfere with that. So finding that integration back into life is challenging. Massive. From two completely different perspectives.
Yeah, it's massive, and it's hard for both. I've listened to some of the podcasts, and I can't imagine, I can't imagine. I did a little bit of TA myself, and I think in some respects that probably helped me be a bootneck wife, because when he said I'm coming off the Rangers, I knew that didn't mean I'm getting in the vehicle. It meant I need to clean the weapons, I need to check them all into store, I'm actually not going to see you I'm not going to be on the road for another hour and a half. Do you know what I mean? I kind of...
Yeah, he was an officer. What he meant was one of the lads is going to clean my weapon.
I'm going to delegate, someone else is going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit and drink tea somewhere.
Yeah. But no, okay, so coming out of the TA gave you, that's probably why you're so suited, because you are.
In some respects, I loved the own space, and then he parachuted in, and the adrenaline and the fun, and then he disappeared, and I could be me again.
What we spoke about outside, let's talk about that, because that was really important. About no one on this podcast has never been the other person that's left behind whilst, people go away and deploy and whatnot. So, and again, I just touched on it then in terms of the two different positions you find yourself in when you come back home. But yeah, wives, girlfriends, partners, kids. That was the hardest thing for me when I disappeared for a few months, was leaving my little lad. I didn't care about the missus. She was fine. But it was the
it's
kids.
Always the kids.
I was like, I'm trying to think how old my boy was. He was probably 6, maybe. I can't remember. 5, 6. And I just remember thinking, so you can remember me?
Yeah.
And like the what ifs. And it's...
When Si left for Afghan, Sophs was crawling. When he came back, she was walking. He'd missed all of that, he'd missed all of that. And, the guys do stuff that helps, like doing storybooks or doing what have you. But I have to confess, I only listened to the storybooks once, because he read one of their favourite stories. I pressed play, Daddy read one of their favourite stories, and then he said, and this will choke people up, but he was like, I love you loads, I'll be back soon, be good for mummy, da 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 da. And the kids, it went silent, and the kids then fell to pieces, and that literally took me days to put them back together again. And it was like, was that worth it? Like, yes, it was lovely to hear Daddy's voice, but was that worth it? Because now I'm dealing with 2 emotional wrecks because Daddy's not here.
Whilst trying to deal with your own...
Yeah, I was still a lawyer in those days, just like busy.
Yeah. Tell us, do a massive jump forward. Tell us what you do now.
Yeah. So I'm now a grief and life coach. I focus on 2 things. Because I was ironically a wills and probate lawyer, so I did death and dying when I was a lawyer, I try and encourage people to have all their paperwork sorted, so that whatever happens, illness, death, people are a bit more organised. But I also absolutely love supporting people to grow life around grief. So I don't believe the grief ever goes, but it doesn't mean you can't find an amazing life. It doesn't mean you can't do fab things. And like you said, stand outside, talk about Si with a smile on her face. That's normal. People don't do it enough, but it's totally normal and it's totally possible. I really love what I do now.
Would you agree with if I said it doesn't get any easier, but you just learn how to cope with it?
Yeah. It's that naff analogy of like the waves. You know, the waves still come, but you learn how to ride them. So it doesn't mean they don't stop. But sometimes they take you like this morning, like one of our horses is poorly because it has cancer, cried twice this morning because I'm nursing a horse, which is crazy, but I nursed a husband and it just comes back and slams you and you can't predict it. You know, you can go tomorrow to a funeral and think it's going to be really hard and actually be really surprised or help your mum with her stuff.
Yeah.
And that's an anticipatory grief and expect it to be really hard. And it's not. And then suddenly you find something if your dad's lying at home whilst your kids are telling you about their day at school and suddenly doof, you're hit and you're just like, what's happened? And people don't talk enough that's normal. That's just the way it works.
I haven't been hit for probably a year or so for things like that. When I was moving mum's stuff, I would open up a drawer and there's my dad's passport and I was like, winner. Like, and I was on a time scale. We had 72 hours to clear this flat. I didn't have time to mess around with grief at that point. But in the evenings I felt myself reflecting and accepting, and rather than being upset, of course I was upset, but I did have a few wobbles out there, but I don't know, I just I think reflection.
I think you've hit on something really important that people don't talk about enough, though, is that we all keep busy because the adrenaline, the cortisol, the dopamine, it keeps us going, keeps us going, keeps us going. And that stuff is in a box and we don't need to go there. And then we get frightened of the space because if we have the space, what's in the box? And I have people come to me and they don't even know what the big trauma is. They're just scared there's a big trauma and they don't want to open the box. And it's fascinating.
I'm sat here picking my nails.
Sorry.
No,
I always.
No, there's like, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm like, I'm not fine. This is going to catch me up. Yeah. But
it's the kids, though. It's the kids that always catch everyone. And it catches me out. You know, I feel big enough and ugly enough to be able to cope with my own stuff myself. And pretty much like you, I've built my kind of self-care toolkit. People often say to me, how can you do what you do? And part of it is I'm a very different person now who I was like 9 years ago. Like when Simon died, he turned around to me once on the sofa and he was like, is something wrong with me? And a little part of me was like, you're a bootneck, where do I start? And then I was like, what are you on about here? And he's like, I just don't feel it. And the reason it had come up is they told us that on the morphine, stuff might come back to haunt him because they'd had a soldier in there before, para. So, you know, maybe not the same breed as you guys, but I don't know. And he was like, but nothing haunts me. Like nothing, like his worst morphine nightmare was about losing Spoof. I kid you not. Serious consequences, I know, but like when you think about everything that you guys do, it's crazy that should have been his like worst nightmare. And at the time, I was like, but I've got enough emotion to hold the whole family. Like I felt like when he was alive, but like I said, I just had this horrible gut feeling he wouldn't be mine forever. And maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he was destined to live until his 80s and 90s, and just this horrible cancer came up and kicked him in the teeth, and that's what happened. But since he died, it's almost like a part of him became a part of me, and I can just box things like I've never been able to box them. It doesn't mean I don't process them, but what it means is I take them to my own therapy or my own supervision or my own this or my own that, or just the horses, and I'm shovel shit and muck out, and that is partly my headspace. But you know, you find your own thing, whether it's kickboxing or whatever it is, and you process it then. And knowing what your self-care toolkit is, I think, is so important.
Yeah, but we learn and we grow. This is 9 years, and you're a different person now to when you were. It's just I was talking about this on the previous podcast with Lee about learning from your mistakes, slightly different, but we have to learn as we grow. We have to, like, we're adults, we've got children, we've got responsibilities, and you just become different people. Like I joined, I was 23, 24, not a care in the world, didn't have kids. Life was simple.
Yeah.
Everything was great.
And I feel like that meeting Si, you know, like I met this young officer. I was supposed to be being paired up with someone totally different. They were very drunk. I thought, I'm not having anything to do with Royal Marines if that's what they're like. And then it was the days where we had no mobile phones and all the rest of it. Got to my flat where we were supposed to be staying, and suddenly realised that I didn't have a house key because one of my girlfriends had a migraine and she'd taken and gone home first. And I was like, well, this is a bit embarrassing because I'm stood outside a flat in London and I can't get in, but I live here and I've got folk with me. And I turned around and Si had done a runner. And I was like, well, that's a bit weird. And he climbed the drain pipe, hopped over the balcony, walked down and opened the door. And he was like, you guys coming in then? And I was like, oh, he's a bit cool, isn't he? But you're kind of idolised. And it's like, oh, wow, this Royal Marine, he's a young officer in training and all this, that and the other. But at the end of the day, we've all got baggage. We've all got shit. And you say the word mistake. I think we learn the most from our mistakes.
Yeah, well, we should do. We should do. And going back to what I was saying about not waiting till the wheels fall off before you take action, but having your toolkit that you've got. I've got my toolkit for what I do in health and fitness and wellness and all. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. Catastrophic mistakes. But I try and learn from it and I try and move forward. I try and lead by example. I always say to people, holistic health, I try and lead a life, what I do in the shadows when no one's watching, all the stuff that I do, how I behave around people, whether I'm in my car driving, how I have conversations with my children, with whoever in the street. This is what health is to me, holistic health, this wellness of how we behave and portray ourselves as humans. And that comes from making mistakes and learning. But it also comes, I think, from growing up. The gap between late 20s into 40s is enormous in terms of, I think you do grow up. You should do.
And I think you realise that, I know it sounds very negative, but life is 50% shit. But that you have a choice. You have a choice whether you focus on the good stuff or the bad stuff. And that'll determine how much you're enjoying your life.
Exactly. Control the controllables.
Yeah.
Although I keep saying like these Chad things, but it's true. It's true. Like, control what you can control. If you can't control it, then there's not a lot you can do about it.
No.
Paras, you mentioned paras. My brother's ex-2 para.
Okay.
Yeah, so I initially, when I joined the Corps, I was supposed to join the paras when I went down to the careers office, but there was a bootneck in there, and I came back and went, I'm joining the Corps. But he's a different breed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worry about him. He's been on my podcast before.
Okay.
Let's see if he watches this one. But he's I saw him struggle when my dad died because he's my older brother, and I was like watching him cry and I was like, wow. We had to go to Spain for 3 or 4 days waiting for the funeral, and it was just horrendous. Sat around the table where my dad would have sat, and it was me and my mum and my brother.
Space.
Yeah, and every now and then one of us would just have a wobble, but no, we never said anything to each other. I would just be sat there and we'd just be like having a beer, probably on our phones, or just sat there just like, this is shit. And then one of us would just just go and take ourselves off, and the other one would be like, right, yeah, right. And then that just kept going backwards and forward. But I feel like he's never done something to, what's the word, like cope
Process
or,
it.
there you go, yeah. Whereas I feel like I'm in a really good place because of my coping mechanisms, because of what you spoke about, my toolbox. I like that. But with him, I'll see him on Saturday, actually. See him tomorrow. No, Saturday. But I had him on the podcast. Thought, right, I'll open him up. Yeah. Good one. No, it wasn't happening. But he's like a prime example of people in the world that I feel I worry about that don't deal with these sort of things.
And they don't deal with it right now because it's too painful to deal with. But I often say to clients, your emotions are like it's another Chad thing, but your emotions are like a pot on the hob, and it's bubbling away and it's heating up, and your emotions are swirling around inside, and something, like we were saying earlier, something will turn the heat up. And unless you lift the lid and look at it occasionally and cool it down and see what's happening inside, it's going to bubble over. And if it bubbles over, everyone notices. That's when the wheels fall off. That's when it all goes crazy. So really what people need to be doing is just, and it comes back to that thing of what you do and what I do shouldn't be a crisis purchase. It should be an ongoing maintenance thing so that people know, because life is hard.
I love your lingo you keep coming out with. You probably don't know you're doing it.
No.
Chad.
Yeah. I'll say threaders or essence next.
Portia, so she wasn't with me when I was a Marine. I mean, I left the Corps in 2011, but we've been together 6.5 years, but because she's been introduced to this
Lots of
podcast, my
bootlegs.
business, it was built, we go to London, we meet lots of bootlegs, and that's so funny. She said to me the other day, when I was cracking her in detail, are you? I was like, what? Yeah,
You just fall into it. And it sometimes when people see a grief, they see the loss of the person and they don't see all the stuff around it. And like some of the stuff around it for me is losing that connection to the military. So then I get a little bit overexcited when I chat to people like you, because I'm like, oh, I'm back in the military world. This is like
the thing is, when I was serving, I was so probably far from that corpist mentality. I was never that person. It's only since I've created this wonderful green beret, as you can see, that I almost brought my identity back, because I lost it. This is the whole purpose of when I built what I built. I left in 2019. I transferred to the Navy, left the Navy, having been medically discharged, 2 years in rehab, completely lost my identity and everything around me. But when I started finding my purpose again and what I was trying to do, I dug deep into back to Royal Marines.
Yeah.
I mean, I served 6.5 years, nearly 7 years, which was enough for me to look back at like the ethos and what we did and how we operated and how we function and why the Royal Marines stand for what they are in terms of like a step above everybody else. And I went, that's it. That's why I am who I am now. And that's why I had to have a part of that identity in my logo, in my business, in my vision, all the stuff that I've written. And
because it's such an important part of you. And
but at the time I didn't realize everything was shit. This is shit.
Yeah.
But it's now I get it.
Yeah.
I get it massively.
And that's kind of what happened to me in lockdown, because I ironically quit law just before lockdown to spend more time with my kids. And they were like, be a partner, change officers. I was like, no, I don't think you understand. I'm burning out. I need to just stop for a bit. And I wound my cases down, and literally a week or two later we went into lockdown, and I had a bit of an existential crisis, because I was a little bit like, well, I don't like being a widow. I'm not a wife. I love my kids dearly, but I'm not very good, like most bootneck mistresses. I'm not very good at being a full-time mum. I need to have something that's for me. I'm not a lawyer anymore. And actually now I'm not a lawyer. I'm quite proud of the fact that I was a lawyer, and all the rest of it. And then slowly, a little bit like you, I crumpled. This was probably fall to pieces number 2. But it was also really fascinating, because it's a couple of years after the death. And I think everyone comes round you after a death. And then a year or two later, everyone goes about their normal business, but you're still living with this huge hole in the family. And it was that couple of years later that I was just, and it wasn't helped that we were in lockdown. And so I was having to go to the supermarket and do this and do that, because I had to feed the kids, you know. And I felt a bit guilty that I wasn't doing wills and doing wills through windows, because that would have been my old job. And I was just like, so who on earth am I? And that's where I started doing a counselling qualification. And then I realised, like, what's at the core. Like, I feel like it's the soul's purpose. I did all the legal stuff. I've always been fascinated in mental health, and I think people are utterly fascinating, and it kind of finally all comes together.
And again, this is what I've experienced from doing what I do. I didn't have this dream. It just happened.
Yeah.
And it happened. My business was built through my own experience, much like yourself. And I suddenly was just really good about talking about my experience. And I used to just get my phone out and talk about it, and people started relating to it, and they started chatting to people, and then they become clients. And then I found this structure of what I was trying to do. And it was, you know, I never went, I'm going to be a health and wellness coach. I was a Royal Marine. You know, it's like, it's madness. I went into strength and conditioning. Everything was aggressive, stacks of smoke straight down the middle.
Testosterone.
Yeah. And that's it. It's just a really aggressive lifestyle. Everything that we did, even outside of the military, everything was just go, go, go. And it took me to then lose my health, to then have all these problems that I had, to find health and wellness and go, that's it. That's what I do.
But I think you really touched on something when you say you started sharing your story, because that's how I started. And I think it's how a lot of bereaved people start, is they start with a blog. And there's something so powerful about sharing your story. I think it helps on two levels. For you, that is your therapy. You're helping people
Exactly
by
that.
telling your story.
Yes.
And, people say to me, God, do you mind? And like, I sometimes tell people how Simon died and stuff like that, because they're fascinating, because no one talks about how people die. And they're like, don't you mind? I'm like, each time I tell the story, I process it just a little bit more. It really helps me.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it helps other people to normalize what they're going through, to normalize their experiences. So I love people telling stories. I think it's really, and that's why your podcast is so amazing, because people relate and they listen and they're like, oh my God, yeah, that was shit, because that was shit.
That's why I wanted people to come and talk about things like this, because there'll be one person watching this that just goes like, they might have lost their partner or something, and I want somebody to be able to relate, and that's one of the reasons I did it. It was my way of giving back, but maybe on a selfish point of view, it is my own therapy, because I've been on other people's podcasts and I've loved it, and I've spoken about this, and then I've dug into stuff that I've never spoken about before, about how it made me feel in my health and how I lost this and that and everything that affected me. Maybe this is why I can process things, I think, better than my brother, because he doesn't.
And you're processing it every time you have the conversation.
Yeah.
And, every time you mention your dad and you get a little choked up, you're processing it a little bit more, because it's not in. It's when it's in, that's when. And I also believe that sometimes it touches on your wellness and your holistic stuff. But I really see people who are bereaved and their bodies are starting to tell them that they're bereaved. And no one talks about how physically it hurts when you're bereaved. And like, I literally felt like my heart was breaking the next day. Like my heart hurt.
It's that pain.
It actually was painful. And I think that if you don't talk, that's when you get tummy problems and head problems and eczema problems and all the stuff that people have. And actually it's your body going, hold on a minute, something not right here.
Well, this is a huge topic, right? And it is out of my remit, but I know enough to say that, trauma is stored in the body,
100%.
in organs, in places that then it comes out in different ways. So a lot of my work from my physical injuries, so I work with Mark Jones and Meg Jones at 360 Rehab, who Mark came on my first podcast. Go and watch it, episode number 1 if you're watching this. Mark's a functional neurologist, ex-Navy PTI, ex-Navy exercise rehabilitation instructor. He'll love this. Quite literally one of the cleverest men I've ever met. I need to introduce you to him. So he works with, like, when people have pain, like got knee pain, like it's very rarely the pain side is the problem side. He goes after trauma. He goes after trauma in the body. He'll ask you weird and wonderful questions. Have you had an accident? Have you fallen off your horse? Car accident? Mine came from a car accident, 2002. I was in the back of a prison van. I was a prison officer, not a convict. And I was stood up at the time. The true story, I have told this once before on the podcast with him. So I was a prison officer as a young lad, back of a van, travelling across Salisbury Plain, going to, I think, Winchester Court or something, I can't remember. And I was asleep in the back. I was getting my head down, strapped in like that.
On duty.
Yeah. Every 10 or 15 minutes, if I remember rightly, you're supposed to go and check that the prisoners are not killing themselves, up to no good, whatever. I was like, shit, I woke up and I was getting thrown around in the back, going across Salisbury Plain. So ex-bootneck was driving.
Right.
Never forget this.
Like a lunatic.
Yeah. Oh, wait till I tell you this. And the sod's law, I took my seatbelt off because I thought I'd better go and do the right thing just as we crashed. And he spun and the van just flipped over and I just got sent down it. And what I didn't know, so he had gone through the window, the whole window had come out. He had spun round with his feet up against the cab as it was pushing him along the floor, completely ripped his whole back off. He then got up, went back to the wagon, pulled the emergency levers because they've all got hatches, let everybody out. But I didn't surface. I was unconscious in the back. And I just remember, this is where my trauma comes from, which I didn't realise, was I was unconscious. And I just remember being upside down, covered in loads of baggage. I had my keys on a chain, trying to get out of a door that was essentially on the ground because the van landed on its side. I'm trying to that's how disorientated I was. Now, further to that, when I was 15, I decided to throw petrol onto a fire that went and blew up in my face, burnt me, hospital. Whoa. Yeah, I was a really clever chap. I was now 22 in the back of a wagon upside down. Somebody shouted, "Oh my God, it's going to catch fire." And that was it. I was in sheer, couldn't do anything. And then I passed out. I woke up unconscious outside in a recovery position with one of the convicts holding my hand, going, "You're right, Gov," with a helicopter landed, airlifted to hospital. All right. Now, fortunately, I just had whiplash.
Yeah.
Like, not like, oh, my neck hurts a bit. I was like literally paralyzed, but it was whiplash. If I'd know then what I know now in terms of rehabilitation, strength and conditioning, etc., I would have been a lot better. But I was in a bad way. Anyway, that was going off on a tangent. But that's where the trauma came from. So that trauma led to me busting my ankle, busting my hip, busting my back, etc., and all these weird and wonderful things. So if I go back to Mark at 360 and what he does, he searches for that trauma and he'll find it in scars and places you didn't know existed. And he'll tap into your brain to recall that trauma, to what he says, reset the circuit board and completely reset the system. This is functional neurology. So anyone that goes, "No, it's rubbish," this is science.
Yeah.
This is functional neurology. And he does it through muscle testing to see what's working. So much so, sorry, it's your podcast here.
I love it. I'm listening.
So much so.
It's your podcast.
so that if I've been working for years now and we're slowly getting me into a really, really good place with setbacks along the way.
Yeah.
Now, for example, if I'm very neurologically locked up, but I'm going, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me. He's going, "I can't get into your system today. I can't get in there. You're just too..." So we try some breathing stuff to try and relax like the vagus nerve and try and get all this under control. So much so that this works, that Portia will come in as my surrogate.
Wow.
He'll reset her and she will just touch my skin and create an energy pathway, and he'll work on her. But he's actually working on me, and we prove it through muscle testing, and the proof's in the pudding. But anyway, that's Mark, going on to Mark. That's Mark Jones, 360 Rehab. Go and check out his link. This is functional neurology for anyone that's got pains that won't go away. But go back to the start of that. It was trauma related, and how trauma is stored in the body, and it could be from things like sexual abuse, any sort of abuse and trauma. And that's where a lot of this pain comes from.
But I'm a big believer with trauma that it doesn't have to be the big stuff. So it doesn't have to be the sexual. I mean, obviously, that is very traumatic. But daily small trauma can do as much damage as the car crash or the child abuse. And where I think that then, and this is me, one of my little hobby horses, but it's not very popular, and I get really nervous saying it, but I think there's a lot of neurodivergence in the military. I think you have to be a bit special to be able to go, that's your best friend, even if you don't like them. You have to fight with them and protect them to the end of this earth. And by the way, that's a baddie and you've got to kill him. You know, you've got to be a certain mindset to be able to do that kind of stuff. And I think it's phenomenal. And I think that our brains are very, very clever. But where it comes to me as the spouse and the widow and all the rest of it, is it means our kids are very neurodivergent, which then means that, excuse my language, but the guys go fuck off to another country, and we aren't just solo parenting. We're solo parenting kids with special needs. We're solo parenting kids who are having daily trauma because living in the world as a bootneck kid with issues, and I'm not saying all bootneck kids are, but I feel like I can talk about it because my younger daughter's very happy for me to say, but she's diagnosed autistic. And if I'm honest, I don't think I can just blame Sai. I think it comes from both sides of the family quite screamingly. So I'm very happy to own it. But her trauma, and she's had 3 years post-COVID of struggling to go into school, and I've done that entirely on my own. And when you talk about the body and the vagus nerve and how you are and having that self-awareness of who you are and where you are, it's only now that she's making friends and she's doing better and she's starting to thrive rather than merely survive at the age of 15, that I realise when I drop her off at school, I'm still like this because I'm waiting for her to fall to pieces, to not be able to go in, to not be able to get an education, to have the teachers say to me, why is she not here? She should be in class. She should be doing this. And you kind of think, is it because I'm a bad parent? Is it because of me? And people don't talk enough about all of that as well, you know. And I think that the trauma for me is not the external event. There's an awesome guy called Gabor Mate. I think he's just amazing. Anyone who likes trauma has probably heard of him. He says that it's not the external event. Trauma is the internal disturbance as a consequence of the external event. So that's why you and I can be at the same thing, and I could fall to pieces and you could be strong as an ox, because internally it's not disturbed you, but it has me. And there's nothing wrong with either of it. Our brains just process differently. And what trauma needs is compassion and TLC, because that's where we can start to heal and do it better. I don't know how I went down that one, but that's a big little Emma thing.
No.
I'm really big because people don't talk enough
Yeah.
about the death of a loved one is traumatic.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how they die. Losing someone you love is a trauma, and people don't put it in those terms enough. And if they did, maybe they would have a bit more compassion for the emotions that bubble up and things that they feel.
The talking about it, I mean, I'm not going to suddenly turn this into talking about my dad because I've done that on other podcasts, but yeah, I think the ability that I've had to talk about it openly on social media, all over the internet, for, has been something that has definitely helped. And it's like when people say you've got to talk about it, that's why. And it's not as simple as that, but that's why. Where does rainbow hunting come in? That's what I was trying to get to about 20 minutes ago. You made it in lockdown.
So, do you know, the whole concept of rainbow hunting comes from 2014 when Simon was still alive. So I'm sure that lots of other halves have had a situation where they've been invited to something and the bloke didn't want to go. Anyway, the excuse was, I'm too poorly, I can't be bothered to go. So I went to this wedding up in Scotland on my own with some of my home friends who I've known since I was 15. And my friend Emma, another Emma, also hadn't got her husband there. Apparently he was in France, but similar kind of, I'm not coming. So we were driving from that, wedding bit to the reception bit. And as she was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and she turned around, she's like, so how's Si? And he'd been diagnosed, he'd had his first round of chemo that was brutal, he'd had his radiotherapy, and seemingly he was doing better. And I can be very sledgehammer sometimes, and I just turned around and I was like, well, he's going to die. And she was driving and she's like, I thought he was better. And I was like, well, he's got terminal cancer. Like, unless I die in a car crash on the M5, I'm going to outlive him. And she's like, shit, how do you keep going? You've got 2 young kids. Like, how do you keep going? And I was like, it's a bit, as you guys would say, Chad, I would say cheesy. But I was like, it's a little bit like the weather. Like, there's days where it's cold, wet and miserable and we feel like we're never going to get out of the hole. But you've got to just keep the faith, because the storms never last. They will always, always, always pass. And you've got to go chasing your rainbows, because the sun and the stars are always there. So grey, because we're grey, Emma Grey. Yellow, because it was his favourite colour. 3 lines, because it's me and the kids. Star, because of Simon. And a lot of people, when I first started, they were like, rainbow hunting? Really? You're not going to start batting for the other side? And I was like, no, rainbow hunting as in optimism, as in, come on, like, the opposite of depression is hope. Like, let's just fill the world with a bit of hope. And I think that comes back to the stories, I think one of the reasons people love chatting to you is you went to a dark place, your body fell to pieces, you were a bootneck who really struggled, and now you're thriving. And that gives people hope. And I hope that that's what they see with me. I still fall flat on my face. I cried twice this morning, but I share it, and it doesn't mean I don't still have fun and party. And when Si was poorly, he turned around to me and he was like, you used to say I was the bit of a hand grenade. I'm sober now. You're the hand grenade. It's like, do you know what it's like living with someone who's dying? Sorry if I have another drink. I'll just go take over the dance floor. At least I can dance a bit better than you.
Bootneck shuffle. I love that you just described that, by the way, the meaning behind that.
It's like you, because everything's got a meaning, hasn't it?
It has. So I've had constructive criticism over my logo, my branding, because I'm a health and wellness coaching outfit.
And you've got a skull.
Yeah, they thought it was a cult. And I won't change it, because there's a representation there. So it's on my website. If anyone wants to go and have a look at my website, www.warriorwellnessmovement.com. And
love how you're good at that.
There's a meaning behind it. It wasn't just thrown together. Portia designed it, and then of course we sent it to someone to make it better. But there was a lot of thought behind it. It wasn't just, that looks hoofing, let's chuck it out there. It does look hoofing. But so I love the meaning you've got. I love the star.
And do you know what?
3 lines.
It's the thing that keeps on giving, because actually, when you think about neurodivergence, it's an 8 on its side, which is a rainbow colour. So actually, the fact that we're screaming neurodivergent, undiagnosed ADHD, but I totally and utterly can see some of my daughter's autistic traits in me when I go to the supermarkets and I'm like, too loud, too noisy, need to get out of here. And I look at her and she's like a bunny in headlights and I'm like, should we just go? Yeah. This is all a bit much.
Yeah, no, I never thought I would be saying I don't like those loud places, loud noises. Screaming kids are the one for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just because I've got a low tolerance of that. But last night I took Maya swimming. Oh man, I know kids are having fun. There's a difference between that and just standing there and shrieking at the top of
But
your
do you know
voice.
what? It comes back to your toolbox. So after Sophus was diagnosed, and I can't tell you, it took a couple of years for her to be diagnosed. So she wasn't diagnosed until 13. And it was revolutionary when she was diagnosed. Suddenly school took her seriously. She was no longer the troublesome kid who was being naughty. She was actually a traumatized child with SEN needs. And suddenly they took her seriously. Overnight it pivoted. Livs actually came home one day and she was just like, Mum, what's happened at home? And I was like, what do you mean what's happened at home? My brain was going, oh shit, they've discovered I've done something wrong, like help. And she's like, today, head of safeguarding, my tutor and my head of year have all checked in on me. And I was just like, what do they know about me that I don't know? And I was like, oh shit, yesterday I sent the email saying that Sophus has been diagnosed autistic. And I was like, Livs, suddenly the world is having empathy and compassion for what we've been living with for years. Why does it take a label?
I know, yeah. Go back to your business. I'm staying on that. I'm helping you here.
Thank you. I'm not very good at selling.
No, I know. No, you're not actually. I noticed this outside. I won't say what you said, but who's your clients? Who is it when it comes to trauma and counselling?
So they always say you help a version of yourself. And so a lot of the people who come to me are very successful women. They have really quite impressive careers. They're growing a family. And suddenly a grief has happened. And like you said, wheels are slightly falling off their world. And they've realised that they're struggling. So the grief is the presenting problem, but often there's other stuff underneath. And I believe that with everything, with therapy, with coaching, with counselling, with whatever it is, the biggest myth is we fix. We don't fix. I can't fix your problems. I don't know what it's like to live in your head and have your experiences. But what I do believe is that we can be the mirror, if you like, and we can help you find the answers in you. So you may feel lost, you may feel like there's no answer, but actually, and it's what I said to Sophs one day when the school numerous times phoned me when she was having a really hard time. Mrs. Gray, you're going to have to come and collect your daughter. She can't stay at school. She's too traumatized. Have to go in, collect her, pick up this child. Would probably have been calmer if she'd been on the side of the road after an accident. The first thing I would always say is, you're safe. Mummy's here. It's okay. I'm going to take you home. And I said to her, you will find the answer for this. You might not feel that there's an answer. You might not know that there's an answer, but you have the answer to this and we will help you find it. But it's your answer and it's so much more powerful when it is your own answer because then it means something. So yeah, my clients are often a version of me.
Yeah.
But I think they like that. Often they have neurodivergent kids. Sometimes they're undiagnosed neurodivergent themselves. And I don't think enough people, go back to your toolbox thing. Not enough people, take some loop earplugs when you go to the swimming pool. One of the best things I bought Sophs was noise cancelling headphones. She was teased until I spent a fortune on Apple ones and then suddenly she was cool. But they're still exactly the same thing. They're noise cancelling, and when the world gets too much, you can stick them on. And don't we all love that?
Yeah, my general feeling though is I want to shake the parents and teach them some parenting skills of what's acceptable in society and what's not.
You can't fix other people.
No, you can't. So fixing, that's a big one. So I've learned massively, probably in the last 6 months as well, when it comes to, we talk about parenting, the unwritten rule book that nobody knows about with teenagers. I've been too quick to be a fixer. I'm a bloke. I'm a coach.
And you're a bootneck. Yeah. And you are designed to find solutions.
Yeah, 100%. Like, do this, boom, boom, boom. So with, and I've learned this from Will Petty, who's our cognitive behavioural therapist. Okay. He's been absolutely magic. And I've had some really good conversations with him surrounding problems, I'll tell you, away from this podcast regarding children or my children. And things that I never expected to have to deal with as a parent.
Yeah.
And he said to me, listen, just listen. Talking about my son, just listen to him. And a really good example was the other morning, this week actually, I was taking him to the train station. He's having some problems where he didn't want to be in a certain room environment with certain people. And the old me would have gone, just fucking get on with it. Get in there, stacks of
Such a
smoke.
bootleg.
Yeah. And,
Put your armour on and get in.
and what Will said to me, and I tell you what, any parents listening to this, check this one out. It may be obvious, but it wasn't to me. Will said to me, what you've essentially said to your son is, I don't give a fuck about your feelings. Go in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it really hurt me.
And do you know the best thing to say in response is to validate. So if you as a parent don't know what to say and your kid is saying, like, perfect example with she is so much better now, which one of the reasons she's happy me talking about it, she's like, Mum, you will tell them that I'm better now. And I was like, yes, sweetheart, don't worry, I'll tell them you're better now. But she would have days where and it was never that she didn't want to go into school. She genuinely felt she couldn't go into school. It was like, I can't. And when I said, how come? It's like, I don't know. And I just would be like, I don't know, sounds really big. Or when she said, I'm overwhelmed, I was like, wow, that sounds really overwhelming. And what you're doing is you're literally just mirroring back, but you're saying, I get it. This is the feeling that you said. I'm using your words.
Yeah.
You said that's scary. That sounds really scary.
Yeah.
Full stop. It doesn't. Why don't we all get taught it?
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it?
It's so simple, yet it's so not used.
Yeah. But so here, Will in this case say back to me what my boy is essentially hearing me say, which is, so don't give a shit about your feelings, just go in. And it hit me, and I was like, I felt awful. And that was it. And it was like this. I mean, this happened this week, but over the last few months, this idea of not becoming this fixer. There will be occasions when you do the dad thing or the mum thing and you fix things. That's fine. But the other one,
And sometimes they ask you to.
Yeah.
Mum, can you help me out?
Yeah. It depends how close it is to bedtime, but it's actually physically fixing something when my little girl's buying time. Like, no, I'm not fixing that in that literal instant.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. But the other one is asking the question when he's talking about something. It's like, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
And I found that so powerful, because in the past I would have been, oh, don't worry about it. And again, I've basically just said, I don't give a shit about your feelings. And it's just really made me think. So, yeah.
And I'm a mum of girls, but what I'm starting, especially in the teenage years, and especially as my girls are quite attractive, and some of the boys, I would keep turning around to my girls and going, some of these boys have really big emotions. Just because they're a boy, like, they have really big emotions. They're big emotions. They're massive.
Yeah.
Just because they're a boy and you're a girl, it doesn't... We're all human at the end of the day. Yeah. And like you inferred earlier, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. And, you saying about invalidating feelings, I'm a big believer that boarding school can be very good for the right kid. But I was sent to boarding school at 12 and I hated it with a passion. And part of the reason was I had to learn to look after myself. That was it. I was abandoned. I was a bit bereaved because I was no longer, especially as my younger sister was still at home with mum and dad, having a lovely time. So I felt a bit captive because I was in this boarding school and we had all these rules and all the rest of it. And I just learned to detach. And in some respects, I think that made me quite a good bootneck missus, because I can still detach and I can still cut off. And with my clients, because some of my clients sometimes say to me, they're like, how can you hold all this? I had one day where every single client cried on me. And when it comes back to the fixing, like, normally you want to fix and you want to cheer people up, but actually my people want to break and they want people to witness it and they want people to feel it and they want people to go, it's okay, these are big emotions and you will find the answer and you will get through it.
Incredible. There we go. That's an hour. We've done an hour. Over an hour.
Goes very quickly, doesn't it?
Is there anything else you want to speak about on this wonderful podcast? You've been a superstar. Do you feel less? Do you feel better now?
I always feel a little bit nervous. I always worry that the kids aren't going to like what I say, or that I'm going to say something's not quite right. Do you know what? The only thing I would love to say to anyone listening is if life feels hard, maybe it just is because life is hard, full stop. And the best thing you can do is learn what your toolkit is, how to look after you, and how to reach for help. And if you reach for help and it doesn't fit, try a different type of help, because it's one of the things I get upset about. People go, well, I tried cruise, or I tried this, or I tried that, and it didn't work. It's like, you just haven't found the right person yet. Just keep trying. And like we were saying earlier, people are Marmite. You'll find your person, you'll find your thing. And that, yeah. But yeah, follow me and you'll see how imperfectly imperfect my world is.
There we go. We'll put your website to Rainbow Hunting. We'll put all your social links down below.
you.
If people want to connect with you, I'm sure
Please
they will.
do.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I love people messaging me. So if there's anything that resonates, I'm always in my DMs. So just like send me a message and just chat to me. Tell me what landed.
Superb. Emma, so pleased you came on. I was delighted.
And we didn't cry.
We didn't. Who introduced us? I can't remember.
Sam. Was it Sam? Double barrel surname. She.
Oh, of course. Oh, God, that's terrible. I can't remember her surname.
I'm going to say thank you, though.
Yeah, we'll cut that bit. But, if you're still watching this, I hope people are, please subscribe to it. Get onto the YouTube channel, hit subscribe. It's free and it just helps us push this out to more and more people. We've got Express Media. Will is behind the camera, so go and look at his stuff as well. But Emma, I enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Well done. I'll come and give you a hug now.
Love you.
Well done.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
And you.